Hello everyone, welcome to another podcast. Today's episode 22 of the Chatbox podcast. My interview with broadcaster Chris Kirk. So without further ado, we chat about his broadcast career, his early inspirations, his favourite part about the job and how COVID has affected his life and line of work, and loads more good stuff coming up, and his advice to the next generation. We'll just have a general chit chat, so here it is, my interview with Chris Kirk. Here we go.
Hello everyone, welcome to another podcast. How are you doing today? Right, let's crack on. As you know, each week I have a guest to talk about their career or job. So let's crack on with this week's guest. It's broadcaster Chris Kirk. Hello Chris, welcome along.
Hi Ben, you all right?
How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. That's good. 5 questions about radio and broadcasting, if that's okay.
Of course it is.
You ready to rumble in the jungle?
Let's go.
Let's go for it. Okay, question 1. Where did you start your broadcast career?
My career started at a little building known as The Lodge, which at the time I was there housed 3 radio stations, Wish FM, Wire FM, and Tower FM. And I started my career there by a stroke of luck and a bit of chance, really. I was doing hospital radio in Liverpool at a place called Broad Green Hospital, and I'm from Wigan, which is where Wish FM broadcast Wigan and St Helens. And someone at Broad Green had, for some reason, had won a tour around Wish FM. And she said to me, because she knew I was from Wigan, she said, "Oh, Chris, I've got this tour around Wish FM. You're from Wigan. Do you want to come as well?" I'm like, yeah, too right, I do. I'd never been in, so obviously I wanted to go in and have a look around and go and geek out over studios and play with some faders and things like that. So went in, had a little look around, and we met a very nice guy called Chris Milo, who at the time did Drive on Wish FM, and also looked after the sports for all the stations, because they used to do a lot of sports coverage. So they used to cover the rugby. So, you know, Wigan and St Helens, Wigan Warriors, St Helens, they used to do all the commentary for that. And on Wire, they'd have Warrington and Widnes and do all the commentary for that. And so I kind of asked Chris Milo if there was a chance to volunteer at the station, just kind of come in and make cups of tea for people, that sort of thing. Because you always hear like presenters talking about how they started. Oh yes, I used to go in as a young boy and make cups of tea and that. And I thought, well, that's the way in. I can make a banging brew. Let's see if I can do this here. So, and then Chris actually turned around and said, "Well, actually, there isn't a chance for volunteering, but I actually do need a tech op for the rugby when the season starts again next year." And this was back in 2011 for the season that was going to start in 2012. And he said that he'd let me know and keep in touch. And I never heard anything from Chris for a couple of months until the season was coming around. So I kind of got in contact with Chris and said, "Hi, I don't know if you remember, I came for a little look around a couple of months ago, and you said maybe you'd need a tech op." And anyway, he got me in, and I started doing that. I started tech opping the rugby, doing 3 days a month, just doing a couple of tech op shifts here and there. And it was the most fun I've ever had, because I was sat in an actual professional radio studio playing with proper professional kit, and there were actual people listening to this thing that I was in control of, and it felt amazing. And I just wanted to be there all the time. And at the time of doing this, I was working for an energy company in a call center, and I hated it because it wasn't what I wanted to do. Radio is what I've wanted to do since I was a kid. So I just used to start hanging around at Wish FM in the building and just getting to know everyone and making them cups of tea. I would just walk around the building, opening the studio doors, going, "Hey mate, do you want a brew?" And if I made them a banging brew, I knew I'd be on their side. So my career kind of started there, making cups of tea.
Wow, what a start to your career.
It was good. I mean, it led on to quite a few good opportunities for me there as well. So at the time, I was making a podcast with a friend of mine, which no one ever listened to. We did about 6 episodes of it, and it was purely because I wanted to be a presenter, and I just wanted to talk to a mate of mine with a microphone and just chat rubbish for about half an hour once a month, and that's what we did. And because I was kind of using their studios to do that with, I'll be honest, without anyone actually knowing, we just go in and use the studios. I got one of the producers, a guy called Simon Green, really, really nice guy, Simon, to do some voiceovers for us for our podcast. And kind of from that, he'd heard the podcast and heard that I'd kind of had a few ideas and knew that I was really interested in radio and knew I could make a banging brew. And he put me in touch with Tony Horn, who used to do a little mini network across those 3 stations. So he used to do the mid-morning show, which was kind of networked across Wish, Wire and Tower, and also a Sunday breakfast show, which was networked across the 3 as well. And Simon was the producer for that. And Simon had got a new job and was moving away from Wigan down to Bristol to go and produce the breakfast show on Sam FM, and said that Tony needed a new producer for his Sunday morning show, and did I want to do it? And obviously bit his hand off and said, yes, I absolutely want to do that. So I started producing that. And then from there, kind of looked after a little bit of breakfast as well before Simon, when Simon left, and before a new role was created, and a guy called Simon Lowe came in as head of presentation. And then he kind of took over looking over breakfast. But because I'd been working on Wish Breakfast with a guy called Neil Atkinson, and I got on really well with Neil, Neil just said, look, I want you to just carry on producing this show anyway. So I just stayed with Neil on that show until that show ended at the end of 2014. And my career kind of basically started there, and just as a producer, really, until I was no longer needed at Wish FM. And then I had a little bit of time off from radio because I didn't really have a demo, and I knew what I wanted to do was presented, but I didn't really have a demo as such until I'd put one together. And a guy called Andy Lawson, who I worked with at Wish, he was on Wish at the weekends and did a lot of stuff on Tower. In fact, I think he did Drive on Tower at the time. He put me in touch with someone called Phil Rogers, who was program director at the Bay up in Lancaster, for the Morecambe Bay area, and said, Phil's looking for a tech op. Why don't you get in touch with Phil? So I did. So I just emailed Phil and went, look, and Andy's given me your details. I can tech op. Here's my CV. Here's what I've done in the past. I know how to press a button and slide a fader and make things sound good. Have you got any work? So I went in, met Phil, and from there gave him my demo. Did a little bit of tech op work for him. Gave him my demo, and ended up then being given one trial slot on air, which was 6 until midnight, a 6-hour show on New Year's Eve. And it was the most fun I have ever had as a presenter, I think, because that was my first professional paid gig doing that show. I loved every second of it. And I remember just after the countdown at midnight and my show had finished, I think they kept me on until 12:05 so we could do the countdown and then just put it in automation. And I remember walking out of that studio and just collapsing onto the couch, just like, oh, that is the best thing ever. And then from there, I got given a Saturday night show called Kick Up the 80s and 90s, which was a 6-hour show, just 80s and 90s tunes, just class music. And I got to do some daft things on there, just come up with some silly games, get callers on, just had a nice little collection of listeners that would always get in touch. We had a few regulars on there. Did that for about a year. And then Global came knocking at the door. I said, hi, we'd like to buy your radio station and turn it into Heart. And that's what they did. And I got offered drive time on Heart, which was the coolest thing I'd ever heard of. And so I did that for a year and 2 months until in 2019, when all the deregulation happened and they kind of changed everything and closed a few of their broadcast centers and, you know, moved away from sort of local stations and changed it to more regional, that sort of stuff. And then moved on from there and went on to the wireless group, where I spent a year there until Bauer came knocking at the door and said, hi, we'd like to buy your radio stations. And they did. So I spent a good year at wireless, just kind of between the stations, mainly based at Signal in Stoke. So I did the weekend late show on the network there between 10 and 1. and just popping up at various stations. So I used to do a lot at Radio Wave up in Blackpool, at Pulse, obviously in Bradford when it was there. A few bits down at Peak as well, down in Chesterfield. That was good fun. And then yeah, Bauer came along, and then everything changed there. Did a couple of weeks on Signal, kind of took over mids for a bit. They put Elliot Holman on breakfast. And I took over mids for about 5 weeks until all the networking started. And then here we are now.
Wow. Did you what was your question 2? Who were your inspirations in broadcasting growing up?
My inspirations were actually a lot of local presenters, because I kind of grew up listening to Rock FM, which was based out of Preston until recently. And I loved that station. It was just the station that my mum would have on in the car all the time. It would be on in the kitchen. And so my uncle was a radio presenter, and I kind of grew up as a child knowing that radio presenters were a thing, and knowing that people were on the radio, but not understanding how it worked or anything. My uncle, he was a guy called Richard Dodd, also known as Dickie Dodd, but not Dickie Dodd, who was at Signal 107. Not that one. It's a different one. There are two Dickie Dodds in the world of radio. The Dickie Dodd that was my uncle did a lot of stuff for the BBC, worked at BBC Nottingham. He did breakfast there. He was also the first presenter on Radio 106 in Nottingham back in the day, which has had a few names since, Century, and now is Gem 106. So he was the first presenter on that. And so I kind of knew that radio was a thing, and thought it seemed quite cool when my uncle would turn up to our house every now and then with a massive tape machine, getting me to record random lines that he would then use on his show. And me not having a clue what it was about, but thinking that I'm talking into this box and I can hear that back. That's quite fun. And then realizing that when we were listening to the radio in the car and in the kitchen, that's what Uncle Richard does. Oh, that's quite cool. That is quite cool. And then listening, and then just listening to Rock FM a lot, and kind of growing up listening to Brian Moore when he was on breakfast, and Mark Kay was on Drive, and they were the kind of the two main ones that I'd listen to. It would always be on the bus to school as well. So I went to school like an hour away from where we lived, and we used to get a coach to school every morning, and they used to have Rock FM on. So I'd always hear that, and I just kind of became obsessed with this idea that there's a voice in a box in the corner of the room that's making me laugh and playing songs that I enjoy listening to, and thought it sounded like the coolest thing ever. So I spent a lot of time listening to Rock FM, and particularly around sort of early 2000s, so kind of like between 2001 and maybe like 2006. Spent a lot of my life just sat in my bedroom just listening. So Dixie was on breakfast a lot between that period, sort of when I was really paying attention to it, and Dixie was brilliant. And I kind of became this little annoyance to everyone at Rock FM by just ringing them all the time. There's a guy on the evening show called Adam Catterall, who I'm pretty sure to this day hates my guts. Probably, if anyone would ever remind him of me, he'd probably go, "Oh yeah, that annoying knob." I used to ring him a show probably about 10 times every night, just because I was bored, and I liked the show. And I liked his style and the things that he did. Like, he used to do these random features. He used to do this thing called the top 10, where it was just a top 10 of anything. Like the one I can remember was, here's the top 10 things you'll do in the shower. Number 10, use the shampoo to make a mohawk out of your hair. That sort of stuff. And I just liked the silly aspect rather than the serious side of radio. I liked the silliness and things like that. And it's like Adam Catterall and Dixie and things like that. And then I kind of started listening to Chris Moyles, because I never really listened to him, because Chris kind of comes with a bit of a reputation for being a loudmouth in inverted commas, and he comes with a certain reputation until you listen to him and you kind of understand what he's about. And actually, he's an incredible broadcaster and incredibly good at what he does. Very funny, very sharp, very quick, and is really, really good to listen to. And I only discovered this by a mate of mine lending me his iPod and going through some podcasts. And I remember at the time there was a Russell Brand podcast on there and a Chris Moyles podcast. And I was cleaning my dad's car for a tenner one weekend. And I just put this Chris Moyles podcast on and thought it was the most brilliant bit of radio I've ever heard. And it wasn't even one of his best of podcasts. It was one of the podcasts that he used to do at Radio 1 where when the team were on holiday, they would just do random stuff for half an hour, just silly games for half an hour. And I thought, this is the best bit of nonsense radio I've ever heard. I love it. And I was hooked from then and just listened religiously to Chris Moyles from that point until his show ended on Radio 1. And then as soon as I heard he was on Radio X, I was listening to those test broadcasts of Radio X for 2 weeks, even when there was no presenter on, because I was that excited about it.
Yeah. Chris Moyles, I think, actually got some inspiration from Stephanie Hurst's Daily Dose, because he's good friends with Hursty, I think.
He is, yeah. I don't know whether I'd say he got inspiration. I don't know. Maybe they were competing against each other. I don't know. It's not for me to say that.
They are good friends, though.
They are, yeah. I know that much. I can say that.
Because they used to work at Radio Air together, I think.
Did they?
Yeah, Radio Air in Yorkshire.
Yeah. Which is now Pulse One.
No, it's Greatest Hits.
Well, yeah, greatest hits on its FM frequency, and it's Pulse One on its DAB frequency. It's very confusing.
Pulse One's now actually part of the Hits network.
It is, yeah.
Which
so it was part of the wireless group where I was for a bit until August last year, and now it is part of the Hits network.
So is Viking FM, because I used to listen to Jim Rosie on Viking FM.
Yeah. Well, so is Rock FM.
Yeah, because Rob Charles used to work on Rock FM.
He did, yeah. I remember Rob Charles from Rock FM, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of good presenters out there at the moment. One of my favourite broadcasting heroes growing up was Hursty, obviously. Tony Blackburn, who I heard a little bit, and Steve Jordan as well.
They were your inspirations, were they?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all fantastic presenters, so I can see why they inspire you to.
But Hursty was one of my favourites as well because of the way the breakfast show had the Daily Dose on Capital and Galaxy was formatted.
That's one of the best breakfast shows this country's ever seen, that show.
Did you ever listen to her on Viking?
I didn't know.
That breakfast show was record breaking, but she took it over to Galaxy, the same formula.
Yeah.
And it was still record breaking.
Like I say, one of the best breakfast shows the country's ever seen. Thing is, though, I never really listened to it because I'm not from Yorkshire, so I never really heard it at the time. But I was aware of it and knew what Hursty was doing and knew how big that show was. And it was only kind of after that show had finished that I'd heard more of it, as going on air check downloads and things like that. And a couple of mates that I know who are massive nerds and have archives of shows and clips. And it's only kind of since then that I've heard how good that show was.
Yeah, and also over in Sam Pinkham and Amy Voice were a good pairing together on Gem.
They were, yeah. They were a great pair, and then they went off to Virgin, didn't they? And then
a bit like Milo and Rosie, they were treated not very brilliantly like Milo and Rosie when they were on Virgin.
So I didn't know Milo and Rosie when they were on Virgin, so I can't say anything about that.
Fair. Yeah, I don't like them splitting partnerships up in radio.
Milo and Rosie are a fantastic partnership.
I prefer Jim and Rosie, if I'm honest. I like Danny Milo, but I prefer Jim Coulson just because It's Jim.
I never heard Jim and Rosie, but I know Milo and Rosie very well. I've covered that show with Rosie in the past. What I say, how many more than I should. I did 3 days of doing that show, but you know I've worked for Pulse quite a few times and was on after their show for about 3 weeks last year when Griffo went off and had a baby. Well, Mrs. Griffo had the baby, obviously. Yeah, no, I really like Milo and Rosie, and I think what they do is brilliant, and the chemistry that those two have, you can tell that they are best friends. You know, they bang on about it on air that they're best friends, but you can tell that they actually are, and it comes across on air. And I think they're a fantastic pairing, and they are a perfect example of what a doubleheader should be like on the radio.
I did have an idea one day for the future if Bauer ever fully goes networked. I did have an idea. Do you know, like the Big Breakfast on Channel 4?
Yeah.
Do it like on the Bauer, but call it Bauer's Big Breakfast.
Who would you have on it? 4
presenters.
Don't say Johnny Vaughan and Denise Van Houten.
No. Johnny Vaughan was on Capital FM after Chris Tarrant.
He was. He's on Radio X now.
I'd have Milo and Rosie and Jim and Hairsty on the 4 as the 4 presenters.
That'd be quite good. It'd be very Yorkshire heavy.
I don't really care, to be honest, because they all have good chemistry.
Fair enough.
Oh, I did have an idea because Bauer got rid of Jim Coulson not very goodly. I did have an idea that I sneak into Bauer headquarters in Manchester and hijack the feed for 1 hour with Jim Coulson.
And have you run this past Jim?
No.
I'm not sure Jim would be up for it, if I'm honest.
It's just a jerk, you know.
What would you do on that show? What would you do with your 1 hour special with Jim? What would you do?
Just chat to him about his career and play some good tunes.
Would you stick to the greatest hits format?
No, I'd just stick to the old Viking FM format. Wacky.
Nice idea.
Just wacky. The Capital FM format, the old Hairsty format from Hairsty's Daily Dose. Wacky, unpredictable radio, like Chris Moyles as well on Radio X. Yeah.
That's what it should be like.
Because when he did I remember a video of when he did when he went around the Global building in the scooter.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Mobility scooter. There was Jamie Feakston in the Heart Studio and Emma Bunton and Toby Anstis, I think his name is.
Yeah. And he was ramming into the window, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And doing a little U-turn in front of LBC, in front of Nick Ferrari.
And one of my friends knows Nick Ferrari.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Who's your friend?
It's Alan Hyde, because Nick Ferrari's son has a race team.
Oh, does he?
His son's called Nico Ferrari.
It's a good name. It sounds like someone who should own a racing team.
Yeah.
Particularly when your surname's Ferrari.
Yeah. Nick Ferrari's a good broadcaster.
He is. He's very good.
Yeah. Did you know Toby Anstis or Jamie Feakston?
No. No, but I used to email Toby's producer when I was at Heart, and I used to get him to record me little bits for my show when he was on Club Classics on a Friday after my drive show. So it would always be like, "Oh, Toby's on the way from 7. What have you got on your show?" And he goes, "No, thanks, Chris. I've got some great songs for you to get your weekend started," and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
I never actually met him. I met him through the medium of radio.
Yeah. Yeah, I've just been busy on the radio quite a bit.
You have?
Yeah, doing community radio stuff, my autism show and stuff.
Oh, good stuff. So when's that on?
It's on at the moment. Yeah.
What time slot are you on?
I'm on 12 till 1 because it's a 1 hour program because it's obviously community radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Keep doing that, man.
With my colleagues. Because my friend who knows lots of people has set me up loads of interviews with people like Chris Marsden. Darren Leatham set me up with Milo and Rosie.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because he knows Rosie because they used to work together at Viking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you might have, because there's a lot of good radio presenters out there.
There is.
As well,
there's plenty of us just sitting around.
Jim Coulson's one of them.
He's a good lad, is Jim.
I said to him jokingly, I'd send him this podcast I did with him, like yourself, to Radio Leeds so that they give him a job. And I'd write.
Did he get the gig?
I don't know. He's currently in talks with it, but I'd just write them
you want to get in there and get a percentage of that, my friend.
A 1 million page reference just so they go, screw it, we'll give him the job.
You want to claim agent's fees for that. If you've got him the gig, you can get some money out of it.
Maybe, who knows? I just want people back on the radio, my radio heroes back on the radio who are out of work.
The opportunities are few and far between at the moment, though. That's the thing. But there's plenty of little stations popping up. So, you know, you might see them on some of these little stations that are popping up in various cities around the country now.
Yeah. Question 3. What is your favourite part about the job?
That's a good question. My favourite part, probably, that is a good question. What is my favourite part? I mean, I could sit here and take the stupid answer and say my favourite part is working 4 hours a day and doing nothing for the rest of the day and pushing a button and making songs play. But that's a rubbish answer. Although that is a good perk of it. What I like to do on my shows is I do a lot of sort of creative type stuff. So I will do a lot of sketches and silly songs and things like this, and kind of for example, what I used to do at Heart. So I would take some of the big stories of the day. I was always told by the bosses, your show, you're on Drive. Your job is to basically fill the listener in on the things that they've missed whilst they've been at work during the day. So you take what they called social ammo and just kind of give it to them in bite-sized nuggets. So when they're driving home, they go, "Oh, did you hear about that thing that Jade from Little Mix has done?" That sort of thing. But the way I used to do it was kind of theatre of the mind is a big thing in radio. I always think, and always have thought anyway, because that's what I always enjoyed listening to. When you're listening to something and you can picture things in your head that the presenter is trying to get across to you, or things being done in a slightly different way, rather than saying, "Oh, Jade from Little Mix bought a new T-shirt." That's boring. Doing something different with it and making a little bit of comedy out of it. So I my favorite thing is what the listener's reaction is going to be to the things that are being done. So, for example, I like the idea that someone in their car is driving home, listening to me, whilst I'm telling them what's gone on in the day, but in a funny sort of way. My idea was if I could make one person laugh during my show, job done. Then I'm happy. So my favorite part is probably the idea of being able to just make a listener laugh with something that's gone on during the day. That's a very, very long-winded way of getting to that point. Favorite part, making a person laugh. There you go.
Quick question, yeah. Question 4, how has COVID affected your life and line of work?
My line of work, kind of at the beginning it did. So I started doing a lot of stuff from home. So this little setup that I've got here now, which is very different from how it first started. So I used to have my desk in that corner there behind me, and just one computer, which is the one that I'm talking to you off now. And I used to have that and a little USB microphone, and I used to record things into Zeta to Go, mainly for Pulse 2 and Radio Wave. I was doing a lot of stuff for kind of when lockdown first hit. I did many weeks from this room for Radio Wave, which was very different because I really enjoyed a live environment of radio. I think you get better reactions and you can respond to things better when it's live. So I've done pre-record stuff in the past, and having to sit there for Radio Wave and do links a couple of minutes in advance, because that's how Zeta to Go works. That was different, trying to get my head around that, and timing up a show that is kind of basically recorded already from your back bedroom. It's a bit weird. It's kind of it kind of took me back to when I was 13, 14, and I was sat in my bedroom doing internet radio. It kind of took me back to that, because here I am in my back bedroom doing radio via the internet. So it did change a lot at first. I was still doing my network show on the wireless network from Stoke. The option was there to do it from home, but I preferred the idea of doing a network show when you're on 9 stations. I preferred the idea of doing that live, so I went in and did that live. And I would still go in every now and then and do cover for Signal One live. So it did change quite a bit. And it was the idea of then just building a little setup and a little studio in my back bedroom that kind of changed most, because I've always wanted a little studio in my back bedroom, and now I have an excuse to have one. And so I've got basically everything that I could possibly want in here now. Although if anyone listening to this has a spare effects unit that can put reverb on my voice just for fun, I'm looking for one of those that doesn't cost loads of money.
Yeah. And yeah, it's good that you're doing different radio stuff, because I know that Stoke's old signal is, I think I was told by Nigel James that I think Kirsty does air show from Stoke.
From Stoke? It's a long way for her to go.
I believe.
I'm pretty sure she does it from Manchester.
I was told the old Signal building in Stoke.
I thought she would have done it from Manchester.
She does. I think she does one.
It makes more sense to do it from Manchester as the network hub.
Yeah.
I know she lives in Yorkshire, Barnsley, isn't it, somewhere around there?
Yeah.
So it makes more sense to go to Manchester rather than trekking all the way down to Stoke.
Have you listened to Bella's weekend thing?
I have, yeah. She's brilliant at it.
She's great. I think she'll end up full time on Bauer if one of their presenters decides to depart the nest.
I hope so. I'd like to see her full time on there. That'd be great.
And I have a feeling, because I know she's good friends with Debbie Mack.
She is.
I have a feeling that her and Debbie Mack will do a show on Greatest Hits together for some reason.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I predicted she'd leave Radio Leeds about 2 weeks before she left.
Oh, really?
And I predicted the exact date.
Have you been writing to the bosses again?
No, I just feel things. It's a bit like when I had a feeling Darren Leatham had joined our station, and I found out about a month and a half later it happened.
What feelings are you getting about my career there, Ben?
I have a feeling that you should be back in radio very soon when all this COVID dies down.
Well, fingers crossed, touch wood. I hope so. From an actual studio and not from here. That'd be nice.
If I'm right, then I must have some gift going on.
Then you want to get a Channel 4 TV show like Darren Brown did.
I just feel things in my arm or something, or my nerves, because it's when I'm nervous. Yeah. I can feel something's going to happen, and it happens.
That's a good skill to have, particularly if it's good things that are happening as well.
People moving on to pastures new.
Yeah.
Or I can just tell by people's body language and facial expressions, because I analyse in depthly, you see.
What does my facial expression tell you now?
That you're ready to get back in the radio studio, a big one.
Correct.
The main one. Yeah. Anyway, Question 5, last question on the list. What advice would you give to young, aspiring broadcasters who are starting out?
My advice would be make friends with everybody. That is the best thing that I learned. Everyone in radio knows everyone. It's just a fact that it was once described to me as the industry being very incestuous, and it was only kind of when I properly got into the industry that I fully understood that is a perfect description for it. Everybody knows everybody, and if you rub someone up the wrong way or if you piss someone off, then people will hear about it and people will know about it. Just make friends with everybody. Do not burn any bridges with anybody in the industry, because a lot of it is kind of who you know. Because like I say earlier on, I ended up presenting at the Bay and ended up on Heart because I was put in touch with the boss at the Bay because I'd worked with Andy, who I got on with really well. So just make sure that you make friends with everyone. Don't piss anyone off. Don't slag anyone off. Don't say any bad things about any presenters, any of the bosses of radio stations, or just any radio stations in general. Don't blacklist yourself, because you never know where you could end up. Also, learn how to make a banging brew.
Brilliant. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us today, Chris.
Thank you very much for having me, Ben.
Do join me again for another podcast, but now please give it up for special guest, Chris Kirk. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and that
was my interview with Chris Kirk, the guy who was on Pulse a little bit and other stations. But yeah, hope you enjoy it. More uploads coming later on in the week, maybe today, maybe Sunday, who knows. But yeah, thanks very much for watching, and that's a wrap.